Hello and welcome back for another Sheriff of Sodium video. Well, you might have missed it amidst the emotional drama and anticipation of match week, but on the Monday of match week, the NRMP issued a call for public comment on a new policy proposal. Their question is simple. Should the NRMP calendar be reconfigured to allow residency programs the option of submitting their final rank order list before applicants submit theirs? See, the idea is that if programs certify their rank order list a week or two before applicants have to submit theirs, well, then those programs who have already submitted their rank order list, they could offer in-person second look visits to help their interviewees decide how to rank their program. And then the applicants wouldn't have to worry that failing to attend one of these things that you're invited to would negatively impact their program ranking. Now, the NRMP didn't exactly come up with this idea themselves. This scheme has been employed successfully by the NRMP's ophthalmology doppelganger, the SF match. This past year, the SF match required programs to submit their rank order lists 2 weeks before the applicants do, so that there was time set aside for optional visits to programs. Um, but if you adapt that proposal into a voluntary system in the much bigger NRMP match, well, it substantially increases the scale and complexity. And it also introduces potential trade-offs for both programs and applicants. And you know what that means. Yeah, that's right. It's time to break it down, winners and losers style. Our first winner, applicants. The past 3 years have shown us that virtual interviews are adequate. But yeah, there's something lost when applicants don't get to visit the program in person. On Zoom, programs get to create the most carefully curated version of themselves. But when you visit, sometimes it's hard to sweep all that dirt under the rug. Then you get to see with your own eyes the sleep-deprived interns staggering around the ward like zombies, or you get to see the urban crime zone that circumscribes the hospital that you're going to have to walk through in the middle of the night after you leave your ED shift. I think applicants should be able to visit programs if they want to, and if they don't, they shouldn't be penalized for it. The NRMP's proposal would at least create a pathway for certain applicants to explore certain programs without fear of being downranked for not showing up. Our first loser, February rotations. I think many applicants would benefit from the opportunity to see programs in person. But if we're being honest, I think almost all applicants would appreciate the chance to be wined and dined by programs, especially given that the alternative is another week or two of clinical rotations. Now, we got to be honest. Is this a big deal? I think the educational value of the entire fourth year of medical school is very debatable. So, what's another week or two of empty calories? Our next loser, caterers. Allowing programs to submit their rank order list early, it still doesn't necessarily mean that invitations to the in-person second look are going to be zero pressure. Why? Well, applicants are going to need some advance notice to make travel plans and arrange time off from rotations. They can't just sit around and wait until the day that programs certify their rank order list and then all of a sudden schedule their second look visits for the next day. So that means that programs who want to gauge an applicant's interest, they can still do it. They just have to do it with the invitation to the second look. And of course, savvy applicants are going to realize that although you can always back out of an invitation, you can always have a death in the family, but you may not be able to undo the damage of appearing uninterested when you're invited. Now, for my real ride or die Sheriff of Sodium diehards, this image on the screen will look familiar. It comes from a 2021 mailbag on the Sheriff of Sodium website where I was discussing this ophthalmology proposal to stagger the calendar and allow these in-person second looks. It's one of the few times that I've made a meme. And I'll admit I'm not the best meme maker, but what I was trying to convey here is the gaming that's inherent in this. If the program director asks you, "Do you want to come to our second look?" then the only right answer is going to be yes. But unfortunately, that's bad news for the program's caterer because they're going to get a giant advance order and they're going to watch it shrink substantially as all the applicants who felt pressured to RSVP yes end up politely declining after the program's rank order list is safely submitted. Our next winner, uncool cities. Because over the past 3 years, A good number of applicants have had to face the challenge of ranking programs that were located in cities that they've actually never visited. And fortunately, we're all blessed with this sort of shared cultural canon that helps us remember which cities are cool and which ones aren't. And if you have the choice, I mean, who would choose to live in Cleveland, or Baltimore, or Rochester, or Oklahoma City when you could live in Seattle, or Boston, or San Diego, or Nashville, or Denver? In-person visits, they can be a double-edged sword because in some cases, applicants are going to find that some cool or uncool cities' reputations are wholly deserved. But I think at least now some uncool cities have a fighting chance. They get a chance to show you in person that maybe their city is actually vibrant and livable. Our next loser, program budgets. Even in the Zoom era, residency recruitment is expensive. But now you want to add a large in-person event that's designed to dazzle and delight applicants. Well, that's going to increase your expenses substantially. Before COVID, many programs counted on this. Their budgets included generous allowances for interviewee dinners and drinks. They included money for program swag. Some programs even offered hotel accommodations or travel reimbursement. But when the pandemic hit and everyone's belts tightened, those line items disappeared from the budgets of the program. Now, some departments are going to pony up the cash for those new recruitment efforts, but some program directors are unfortunately going to find that those dollars, once they're gone for good. And if you want to run those recruiting events, you're going to have to take it away from something else in the program. Our next winner, non-wealthy applicants. Now, wait a second. Shouldn't non-wealthy applicants be a loser here? I know that's what you're thinking, but I say no, not if you're playing the long game. And if you stay with me, I'll explain. Now, look, I'm sure that many medical students are going to have feelings of missing out as they watch their rich classmates jet around the country and get treated to 2 weeks of multiple second look visits. But sadly, that's a feeling that they're probably already accustomed to because they see these same classmates, take lavish beach resort vacations after every exam or fly to Europe after match day. It sucks. But that's the world we live in, and no policy from the NRMP is going to change that. Around 1 in 8 medical students actually has parents who earn more than $400,000 per year. This graphic comes from the AMC. So if you don't like this color scheme, which I have to admit does seem intentionally almost confusing, you can complain to them. But it gives you an idea about the social strata from which many medical students come. But that's not everybody. I mean, there's many medical students for whom if they had an unexpected $1,000 expense, they would have to borrow money from, a payday lender or from a friend to cover it. Um, Now, if you're a current medical student, you may not really have thought about what residency selection was like before COVID, but I'll just share with you that in those ancient days, all interviews were in person. And back then, just as now, an applicant who attended more interviews, well, they got more chances to match. And although everyone was ultimately constrained by the limitations of time and travel, some applicants maxed out their credit cards a lot quicker than others and had to stop interviewing. When COVID came, virtual interviews came with it, and that leveled the playing field. Now anybody could do 15 or 20 interviews, assuming, of course, that you got 15 or 20 interview invitations. But you need to understand that's put an increasing strain on programs. If the average applicant now interviews at 15 programs, well, how many applicants does the average program need to interview to fill each of their positions? You don't have to be a math whiz to figure it out. When you put that on the scale, though, of a large emergency medicine or internal medicine program, you're talking about programs that are now doing hundreds of interviews. It takes an incredible amount of time. And each person that you're interviewing, you may have a 5% chance or less of actually recruiting them to your program. Now, of course, the most vocal and prestigious programs, they don't really perceive those downsides of virtual interviews. And faculty from those institutions disproportionately fill positions on the committees that continue to recommend exclusively virtual interviews. But I hear from people all across the spectrum, and you should be aware that the farther that you get from the ivory towers of medical education, the more that you hear equipoise and ambivalence, and occasionally even outright antipathy toward virtual interviews and the powers that be who continue to recommend them. Unless we give programs some tools to manage over interviewing, you can expect that more and more programs are going to move away from exclusively virtual interviews. Now, here there's a lot of things we can do, and expanding innovations like preference signaling probably will help. It gives programs a way of focusing their attention on applicants who are actually interested in their program. But I think that allowing second looks may help too, because then programs have this middle way where they can still enjoy the ease and realize the cost savings up front of virtual interviews while still having a chance to put their best foot forward and recruit the applicants that they truly want. If you take the long view, to the extent that this policy protects virtual interviewing, lower income applicants are going to benefit. It's still not going to be fun to watch your classmates do something that you don't feel like you've got the money to do. Um, that sucks. But compare that to the counterfactual. Compare that to a system in which students from lower income families actually get fewer shots on goal because they're priced out of interviewing at as many programs as their high income classmates. If we go back to that, then you're recreating a system that perpetuates systemic inequality. Our next loser, metric chasing PDs. So intelligent listeners may have been wondering from the very beginning of this video, why is it that applicants worry that attending a second look event is going to impact their ranking? I mean, why does it matter if programs perceive that they have a strong interest or not? I mean, what incentive is there for a program director to increase the ranking of someone who's mediocre, but they said they want to come there? Or to downgrade a ranking of somebody who's strong, but they were wishy-washy about coming to the second look? And look, most programs probably don't engage in this kind of foolishness. They realize that there's no reason to rank applicants in any order other than the order in which they truly hope to match with them. If you upgrade the rank of an applicant who you didn't really want just because they said they wanted to match with you, well, bucko, you just played yourself. But every now and then you're going to find program directors who do care. They need to know who likes them because they're trying to keep their number of ranks needed to fill number as low as possible. What I'm showing you here are some data from the 2022 match. It's the average number of ranked applicants needed to fill each position. And I've got it here broken down by specialty so that you can see, for instance, that the average orthopedic surgery program took 3.8 applicants ranked to fill each position in their program. In contrast, a pediatrics program took around 9 applicants to fill each position that the program was trying to fill. So there's wide variation across specialties. And of course, within each specialty, there's wide variation as well. But because this is a metric that's tracked, it's also a metric that gets chased. And almost always, behind every foolish and vain metric chasing program director, you're going to find an even more foolish and vain metric chasing GME dean who erroneously believes that the number of ranks needed to fill gives them an accurate measure of program quality, or it allows them to compare the programs in their institution so they can really see that their general surgery program director is doing a bang up job because look how quickly their match run terminated. They only took 3 applicants to fill each of their positions. Meanwhile, some other program that ranked people in their true order of preference, they might have had a longer match run, and now they're the bad guys. And if you're that doing that kind of metric chasing, I guess it would be nice to have a second look visit so that you could gauge applicant interest. And you still can, but now you're going to feel pressure to submit your rank order list before you do so. Our next loser, time-pressed applicants. Now, most residency applicants, they have their entire application tied up in a neat little bow by September. But not everybody. Some applicants end up in a desperate race against the clock to become match eligible. Maybe they fail Step 2 CK and they need their scores from their Step 2 CK retake. Or maybe they're working on a work visa or their ECFMG certification. But for a small number of these applicants, those things turn up at the very end of the season. And if those key items have not come through until the last week or two before the rank order list and the program certifies their rank order list early, well, now they're out of luck and those applicants are out in the cold. And our final winner, high pressure second looks. Now, in part, due to concerns over applicants who are waiting on those late-breaking documents, the NRMP has essentially ruled out having a mandatory staggered rank order list deadline. Instead, they're seeking comments only on a voluntary system in which programs can choose to submit their rank order list early or not. So that's good news for programs who realize that their applicant pool, there's a lot of people who have these late breaking documents, or maybe they need an extra week or two to conduct interviews. But a voluntary system does leave open the door for less benevolent programs to continue the standard certification deadline, but then offer second looks at the same time as their other programs that have already submitted their rank order list early. There are some programs that are going to perceive a strategic benefit in doing this. Maybe it's just to enable that kind of foolish metric chasing that I highlighted just a moment ago. Or maybe, and this is even more insidious, it will allow them to compete more effectively with their peer programs by pressuring applicants to attend their second look instead of the one offered by their arch rival. Only their arch rivals already submitted their rank order list. And in fact, if you know anything about how some programs operate in the current world, it's easy to imagine some prestigious programs will deliberately schedule their events to occur on the same day as their arch rival so that applicants are forced to choose to go to just one or the other. Now, here I need to state the obvious. I mean, there's nothing keeping programs from doing this now. They don't need some NRMP policy change to do it. Um, so my best advice to applicants is if you see a program doing this, just vote with your feet. I mean, if a program's going to treat you like this when they're recruiting you, how do you think that they're going to treat you once they have full control of you as a resident? And with that, I come to my final verdict. And if you want my opinion, I think this policy is ultimately a good move. I think at the end of the day, most applicants will benefit by having the option to go and do a second look visit if they want to. Meanwhile, I think that concerns that second looks are going to hurt medical education, I think those are overblown. And I think that fears about disadvantaging lower income applicants are probably incorrect if you consider the realistic counterfactual and take the long view. And if a few bad apple programs try to game the system and pressure applicants while submitting their rank order list late, hey guys, thanks for showing us who you are. But ultimately, whether this proposal wins or loses is up to you. So make your voice heard by submitting your comment to the NRMP before April 19th, 2023. I'll put the link down below in the show notes. Thanks for listening.